What's up guys, it's the new sensation, Big Annotation here, and today we're coming hot off the recent European regionals, in which I ended up playing Mechikabura, and I managed to take it all the way to a 4th place finish, which I'm very proud of. Super happy with, because my aim for this tournament was to get top 4 just for those Altar Sensivines, so very happy that I could take it there. And I think that this is a really strong contender going into the next meta with the anniversary box support. So anniversary box was legal for this tournament, because here in Europe we've got it on time basically. And I really think that the anniversary box support for all of the black decks is amazing. I haven't put together a Shroom Salsa build. Well, I've put together too many Shroom Salsa builds to figure out which one is the best at the moment. But Mechikabura right off the bat is a really strong deck. And it's quite simple as well in what it does, because there's not a huge amount of sequencing to master, and SS4 Bardock is also going to be an amazing deck in my eyes. I was debating between playing this deck and SS4 Bardock going into the tournament, because I haven't really had much time to do a whole lot of testing, especially with the anniversary box stuff. But I ended up going with Mechikabura because I've played a bit more Mechikabura than I have SS4 Bardock within the last week or so, and I just kind of wanted a deck that was fairly simple in what it did. The SS4 Bardock sequencing I'm still kind of getting used to and getting my head around, so I ended up just going with the Mechikabura deck instead, and I knew that I wanted to play a black deck, ideally that was supported with the anniversary box, or I was going to play Kamba, but I ended up going with the Mechikabura, and very happy I did. So I guess we'll quickly go over matchups really quick before going into the deck profile. So round 1 I was against Gobros versus Ivan, who is obviously an incredibly strong player in Europe, and it was he's not the person that I wanted to see round 1, to be honest, but I managed to just about clutch it up. It basically came down to he swung with the Brolyzy battle card with double strike when I was on 3 life. He was tapped out, and then comboed his SCR on it, and I used the new Z extra card from the anniversary box to drop 3 Z energy and remove his Brolyzy battle card because it cost 5 or less. And then it meant that he couldn't push me from 3 damage to 1 to then force the SCR swing through to kill me with. So if I hadn't been able to remove that Brolyzy battle card, I feel like I surely would have died without the new Z extra card there. So that was a super clutch game, very close there. And obviously Gobros is a very strong deck in the current format, so I was very happy to beat a very strong player on a very strong deck going into things. Round 2 was actually on stream. Shout out to the Lookout Damien obviously, and new commentator Joe Revel from Team TNBL, who you guys might have seen on the channel a little bit recently as well. So Damien and Joe were both commentating the regionals, and I ended up playing on stream round 2, and I was against Spirit Bomb. And I think this was also another dice roll that I won. My first 2 rounds I won the dice roll, and then the last 4 I lost all of them. But yeah, in terms of the Spirit Bomb matchup, it was fairly simple. Just this deck builds a lot of value, and against yellow you just need a lot of value, and it also has barrier removal inbuilt. So it was very much just building a massive hand and then pressuring his life as early as possible, and it ended up, I think I managed to kill him on turn 4 or turn 5. The deck puts out a lot of pressure early on, and it can turn that into a very early kill if you don't expect what's coming, which is another advantage of obviously playing an anniversary supported deck right off the bat of its release, because it's you know, it's new, people won't necessarily know what the deck does so much, and especially a deck like Mechikabura where it hasn't really done all that much prior to the recent support as well. A bit of a side note, excuse my voice, it might be a bit kind of hoarse at the moment just because I'm recovering from a cold still, so I do apologize for that. Going into round 3 was my only loss of the day against Green Gohan. Like I say, from round 3 onwards I was going second all day because I lost all of the dice rolls afterwards. And it was a bit unfortunate because that's where all of the Green Gohan and the Gogeta started cropping up, so the matchups that I really wanted to be going first in. But yeah, Green Gohan I ended up losing. I do think this was just down to my own mistakes, to be honest. There was a turn where I discarded a Power Burst instead of a Support of the Dark Empire, and then I ended up getting punished very hard by a Koitsukai into quite a lot of pressure from his turn 4. And if I'd had a Power Burst there, I could have safely just taken myself down to 3 life to get to Z Leader without having to lose a bunch of my hand. And it meant that he could then rip a bunch more out of my hand, and then when he dropped the Uneasing Floodgate on my turn 4, I just didn't have the hand size to kill him, unfortunately. So I do definitely think that that was down to my own mistake there. If I'd kept the Power Burst, I would have been +3 in hand, because I wouldn't have lost 2 from the Koitsukai, and I also wouldn't have... I would have been able to grab a 1-drop back off the Power Burst as well. So, a bit rough there, and I was a bit frustrated at that one, because I do definitely feel like that was a winnable game, and Gohan feels like a really solid matchup for this deck. Something that was unfortunate about that matchup as well was it was a green Gohan matchup where I went second and didn't see Petrification in my opening hand, so I had nothing that could really stop his opening Vegeta into the Trunks combo. So yeah, that was a bit of a frustrating loss. I do definitely feel like this deck has a very good matchup into Green Gohan, as you'll see in the later rounds, but it was a bit of a shame to lose that one, especially so early in round 3. Round 4 I ended up playing against the new blue Gogeta deck, and that was a very formidable deck. Again, I went second. He dropped the SCR on turn 3, the Gogeta SCR for the deck. So he wasn't playing Golden Cooler or Beast Gohan or anything like that. I do definitely think I misplayed slightly in that one as well, because I didn't realize his Z Leader effect Untap 2 is Activate Battle only. So there was a point early on where I could have used a Sparking Power Burst to just kind of stop his remaining attack for the turn, and it meant that he wouldn't have then been able to untap and then untap his Secret Rare and apply a bit more pressure to me. But that was just kind of me learning how to play against the deck, because I've only played against Gogeta once before. And yeah, the game ended up being super close. I went into my kill turn with him on 15 cards in hand and me on, I think, 4 or 3, which was insane. But I'd already pushed him down to 2 or 3 life by that point, and I had SCR in hand, so I knew that I could push quite a lot. I ended up pushing him down to, I think, about 3 cards in hand, but didn't quite have the combo power to finish off, unfortunately. Going into his next turn, I had a Sparking Power Burst to stop the leader swing, to prevent me from getting triple striked, because I was on 3 life. And then I believe he ended up tapping for... he tapped 3 or 4 energy for something to swing through with. I can't remember what it was. I think, oh, in fact, it was a Boo Unison. He used the +0 to draw a card, and then swung and comboed up to 30k double strike with me on 2 life because of the Sparking Power Burst. And I used my 3-card hand at the time to use a Darkness Judgment to give my leader 5k for the turn. I was Z-Awakened by that point, so I was then 25k base, and I comboed 2 5ks to get to 35, so I just managed to live by 5k, and then he went to play the 4-drop Goku from the deck, which you can play if you have a Z extra card in play, and I was able to use Evil Saiyan Auto to then steal that, so it was a case of if he'd then comboed the Goku from hand instead of trying to play it, and then having it get stolen, I do think he would have won that game. But yeah, it was an extremely close game. Definitely just came down to that last 5k combo and the last small misplay on his part. But this deck does have, you know, ways to deal with Gogeta, which I do really like as a black deck. Round 5 and round 6, I played against none other than Green Gohan, of course, going second both games. I did end up seeing the Petrification early into both of those matchups, which was great, but they didn't end up playing the Vegeta chain on me, I don't believe. I think both of them just opted to play a cantrip and pass, probably because they expected the turn 1 Petrification, which does make a lot of sense, to keep their hand size up rather than just running straight into a Petrification, and meaning that they can't drop their Goku Gohan combo turn 3. Both the games were incredibly close, I think, but... I believe the first one, my opponent just didn't see an uneasing on turn 4. He saw one for my turn 3 where I was putting a lot of pressure on, because I was able to get my triple attack on very early, but then he just wasn't able to see one for my kill turn, unfortunately. I would have been looking to push through it anyways, but it would have obviously mitigated my hand size quite a bit. And then in the 6th round against the other Green Gohan, It was fairly close. I dropped a Shin on my turn 3 to stop him from going into the 8-drop. And then I held 2 energy up for Petrification and just a Power Burst or something. And then he ended up dropping Kaioken. He had a Freezer on board, and he then swung with both of them and dropped double Zamasi to just start ripping my hand apart. He also had the Bardock Unison in play, so my hand was really, really dwindling. I managed to Z-Awaken and get to 25k base with the Darkness Judgment, and then just kind of stick it out from there. Very, very close there as well. And I managed to use a Petrification just to negate the Leader Swing Double Strike, and then Sparking Power Burst to stop his Broly battle card from swinging through on Double Strike as well, which just about managed to survive the turn. And then going into his next turn, I was just able to kill him on the clapback, because this deck on turn 4 can do a lot. So that's my little ramblings about the matchups there. And yeah, it was unfortunately a 6-round tournament because it finished a round early. It was expected to go to 7 rounds. I was hoping it would go to 7 rounds because I wasn't guaranteed to make top 4. I just kind of snuck in based on tiebreakers. But I do feel confident in this deck, and I did feel confident at the time that I could have won another round had there been a 7th round. So I was hoping that there would be a 7th round there, just so that I could kind of guarantee that top 4 with the last round pairings. But we managed to get it anyways. So enough ramblings from me about matchups and stuff. We'll get straight into the deck. In fact, just before I do, I have to give a couple of shout-outs. First off, shout-out to my teammate Peter Dance for coming 3rd place with Golden Frieza. Super, super strong player on a super, super strong deck, of course. So congrats to him. I imagine we'll hopefully have a deck profile of his up fairly soon. It might be fairly similar to the lists that he's done before on the channel, but you know, it's good to have him on again. And if there's any new changes, he can let you guys know, but also he'll break down his matchups and his thoughts throughout the day and everything like that. So you guys can stay tuned for that. And also I have to give a massive, massive shout out to Mikey from my team as well. Like I said, I haven't had much time to test this week. I have done a good bit of testing with Mechikabura and SS4 Bardock, but not enough to say that I'm 100% confident on both the decks, which is why I went with Meki over SS4 as well. But I definitely didn't have enough time to throw a list together myself, so this list is mostly Mikey's list. I think I made a couple of changes and then obviously put the sideboard together myself. But in essence, Mikey is the brains behind the deck for sure. So I have to give a massive shout out to him because the deck performed amazingly. So the leader, I guess we will cover a couple of the cards just because people might not know what they do. Some of the cards are fairly old, almost 10 sets by now. And yeah, we'll just break it down. So the leader, when it attacks, you can search for 2 Dark Dragon Balls from your life or deck, and so that's really nice. You can check what's in your life early on, and you hope to see no Dragon Balls in your life, most matchups obviously. And then the Awaken is when you have 7 Dark Dragon Balls in your drop, you untap 1, draw 1, flip over. On the backside, when it attacks, you draw 1, and then it has an interesting activate main where you can bottom deck a card from your hand if all your energy is black, and then you can either take control of one of your opponent's battle cards that cost 4 or less and negate its skills for the game, or you can remove the 7 Dark Dragon Balls to give your leader triple attack for the turn. And so knowing when to use that triple attack is something that's really important, because you also have a Z leader now with the new support, so you will lose the potential to go into triple attack if you Z awaken too early. And the triple attack is really important because you get to draw 3 on that turn, because you get the on attack auto 3 different times, it's not once per turn. And there were definitely some times today, especially in the early rounds, where I wasn't really used to playing the deck yet, where I was just clearing off my opponent's board and then realizing that I could have taken one of their battle cards and got an extra swing with the leader activate main, so it's quite important to watch out for that as well. I think the main thing to look out for with the triple attack is just to see, just to think about floodgates, because obviously a lot of floodgates don't hit your leader, such as Riposte. What am I talking about? Riposte obviously hits your leader. I mean Vegito doesn't hit your leader, which is great. So if Vegito comes down, you can kind of just ignore that triple attack through. But then cards like Dormant, Uneasing, Riposte as well is another one obviously, and Defending Friends, obviously this guy gets through, which is great. And then just the big old floodgate of having your leader be 20k base, whether it's a Z leader or a Senzu Bean style effect. that's very important kind of to watch out for. So it's important to know when to just forgo the triple attack for the game, or when to maybe hold your Z Awaken a turn just so that you can get that extra triple attack value. And it's kind of hard to gauge, but the way that it's best to do it is, especially if you're looking to put a lot of pressure on for the turn. Say they're going to drop a floodgate like Dormant, you can think, okay, if they have Dormant, what are my plays? And if they don't have Dormant, what are my plays? Because Dormant is really the main card that shuts this triple attack down, because you only get a +1 still, because you bomb deck a card from hand and then you draw 2. So it's really not great going into Dormant. And it also means that then you don't have any of your bigger swings to go through, because if you've been dormanted and you're swinging at a 20k base Z leader, you're really not doing much with your turn, is the issue. So it's important to know when to use the triple attack, and to consider what your play would be if they have dormant and what your play would be if they haven't, and then kind of figure out first of all if you can play around dormant. If you can't play around dormant and you just have to kill them, then you just go for the triple attack, and if they have dormant you would have lost anyways. But yeah, it's a hard thing to gauge, and it's a hard thing to explain. Maybe I'll try and cover it in a separate video, because I don't want to take up everyone's time explaining one little niche thing about the leader. But yeah, using the triple attack and knowing when to use it is very tricky. But generally I'd advise just use it as soon as possible when they haven't got the chance to floodgate you. And also something that's really nice is against a floodgate like Uneasing, the triple attack is really nice because you replace the card that you Z-charge for every attack. And even if they're 20k base, you want to do the triple attack because you want to generate Z energy in this deck. This deck can struggle to generate Z energy a lot of the time. But also what you can do is on the second triple attack swing, you can Z Awaken to go to 20k base yourself, which will then threaten Z Awaken leaders. And then because the triple attack is already pending, you can then restand your leader and swing a third time for 20k, or a third time with your leader, a second time for 20k, and also get the on-attack auto of your Z leader, which is super nice just to cycle further, and to fill up your drop for overwhelms and similar effects. So yeah, knowing when to use the triple attack is really important, but generally as a rule of thumb I'd say just use it as early as possible, because the later into the game you get, the more chance your opponent is going to be Z Awakened or have some sort of Senzu Bean, or just have a floodgate. Against Green Gohan I was aiming to use this as soon as I saw that they weren't dropping Dormant on that turn. There was even a game where I ended up going triple attack on turn 2, sorry, because I was just able to find all my balls super early. Speaking of the balls, we were on 7 obviously. 4 of the Dark Empire Strikes Back, 3 Yearning. This card is basically just a 5k combo. Sometimes you can warp one of their 1-drop battle cards, so it's a nice answer to Black Mouse Saiyan if it comes up, which it generally doesn't. It is very nice against Go Bros in testing. In the couple of games of testing I did, shout out to Tom and Joe for giving me the odd Go Bros game here and there. In the Go Bros matchup it can be very nice just to warp their 1-drops off the board, but most of the time you don't really need to use it for that, and at the same time using that is going to be a -1 when all you're doing is kind of choking them out of the 1-drops, which sometimes isn't worth depending on whether they see more 1-drops really. And then the Dark Empire Strikes Back, this is the main one you want to use because it's free. You pitch a Dark Dragon Ball or a Demon Realm Race or Demon God, and then draw 2, and your opponent warps a battle card from their drop area. Also, when you awaken, your opponent warps a battle card from the drop area. So it just sets up some of your effects, but it's also quite relevant, this format, with just there's quite a few different decks that rely on some effects in the drop area. Green Gohan likes to have their little Goku in the drop area to combo from leader skill. Go Bros obviously wants to bring its 1-drops back. Gogeta obviously wants to warp its Goku and Vegetas to get the pluses off of their Aegis effects. Yeah, there's just a couple of nice little interactions that the drop area manipulation comes up in here and there. And then a fairly new support card. The thing that I am surprised, the reason why I'm surprised that they supported Mechikabura in the recent anniversary box is because it already got a bunch of support in set 21, when they also supported Black Trunks. So this deck kind of has 3 sets of support. In the original set it came out in, the set 21, and then the anniversary box, plus it's just a Demon Realm Race leader, so it gets all of that generic support too. So there's really a lot of ways you can take this deck, which is quite interesting. But this guy is just one of your 1-drops. You play him for 1, you can then search for a Dark Dragon Ball and then put a Dark Dragon Ball from your deck to the drop. So really nice for thinning out the Dark Dragon Balls early on. And then he's got a really nice activate main for 3 energy. If your opponent has 3 or more energy and you warp it from your drop area, you can warp a battle card from your opponent's drop, and this one you get to choose the battle card, which is nice for hitting out Koitsukai. And then you can play an 8-cost Mechikabura from your drop area or hand, and it gains barrier for the turn. Surprisingly enough, I did not use that effect at all today. I only ever played it for 1 early on if I just needed to thin out a couple balls. But in testing, this comes up a lot. There are a lot of times where you just go hand for hand against your opponent all-ins you, you combo out just about. You both have really nothing in hand. And then you can just go, okay, tap 3 to spawn a whole board on from drop, which is insane. This guy is really nice, and it's also a great 1-drop 2C early on, just to thin out the balls, of course. And then as for other cantrips, we have this 1-drop Toa at 3 copies, just a simple search top 5 for any demon, god, demon, realm race, or evil wizard. It is relevant that she's a Toa name for the Toa chain that we'll get into later, but she is technically an evolved target. I kind of hate this card. I think I sided out a couple of copies almost every game. The top 5 search is nice, but I prefer the other 2 cantrips in the deck, and I was just siding this card out for shins a lot of the time. And the evolve never really comes up. But it's still, it's a nice card to have, a top 5 search. But we don't run the Demon Realm Race super combos because I feel like Vegeta's still better. So there's no like super combo searching off of this. The value is really not there for me. There were a couple of times, like it's still a great card, don't get me wrong. I still think it's nice to play unless you just mainboard shins instead. But and it's also a Demon Realm Race target for your pitch for your balls. But there were definitely times where it fixed my hand just because I needed a play on turn 2, and I would drop this and find a play for turn 2. So yeah, it's still a nice card. I just ended up siding it out quite a lot. And then the last cantrip is 2 of the Mechikabura Dark Ruler. This is, I think, just my favorite cantrip in the game. I really love this card. I love how when it first came out, I remember looking at it and thinking that card will have some really niche applications later down the line once servants become like a thing that's widely used. And yeah, it just comes up sometimes that it's a 1-mana draw 2 and generates you a token as well. So it can basically get you +3 in advantage, which is really insane just for a 1-drop. Only 2 copies because we only run 1 servant in the deck, so there's really not many times where this guy will be live, but it's still worth running just as a cantrip. It's going to give you more value than the Toa most of the time. And then going into sort of the turn 2 plays, like I was saying before, this deck really can rush down people early, and turn 2 is where that all starts to happen, especially if you're going second. With this Shroom, so you can play him for 1 energy if your opponent has 2 or more energy, and then he's a 20k. When he attacks, you warp one of your opponent's battle cards that cost 7 or less, and then if they have 2 or more cards in their warp, you also get to draw a card, which is where some of the early warping that your bulls are ideally doing sort of plays into the deck, because some of your cards just have the odd warp specified requirement which you need to then meet, such as this Shroom. And the Shroom is just an amazing card. It can get you +2 on every swing, and what you'll start to notice is a lot of the turn 2 plays are going to be giving you advantage on swing, and a lot of the games I was just developing 3 of these guys, obviously not this guy because it's a limit 1, but 3 of the guys that give you advantage whilst they're on the board, and then the opponent would generally have to just leave 1 alive because I have Sparking Power Burst, I have Token Negates, it's very hard to attack into them, and a lot of them are 20k as well. So yeah, a lot of the time a couple of these next couple of cards will stick, and then you'll just be able to generate and snowball and trampoline advantage here and there. So going into the rest of the turn 2 plays, we have the Supreme Kai of Time TP. And this guy, you can play it for 1, and it is one of the 2 cards in the deck where you can also dig out your balls. So when you use the activate main, you have to have 2 or more Dark Dragon Balls to play it for 1 in the drop. and then you can play it from your hand, and then you can search your deck for up to 2 Dark Dragon Balls and place them into the drop. So it's important to note you cannot play this card after using your leader triple attack skill. So once you use your leader triple attack, you just sort of charge and combo this away as you will. But I'd still advise against most decks just getting the triple attack out of the way as soon as possible, because it's such a huge swing and advantage. This is generally just a turn 2 play anyways. Sometimes you play it turn 3, but most of the time your turn 3 is dedicated to defense instead. But this is a 10k servant, so it's your servant for the Overlord 1-drop. So it's a 20k swing as well as the Shroom, which is great. Again, for getting over those 20k base leaders. And it's got an auto limit 1. When this card is played, or when you take control of one of your opponent's battle cards, your opponent warps a card from their hand. So again, it's going to give you that gradual advantage along with the Shroom if it sticks around on the board. A lot of the times people will leave this guy on the board just because it's not a swing, because it's got Servant, and then you can just get that extra advantage. And a lot of the time people will prioritize removing the Shroom or the next card, just because they're also a swing on top of the advantage that they get, which is fair enough and makes sense. But the Supreme Kai is just nice to have for general hand destruction. The odd warp from hand is never going to be bad. And then, of course, combined with your leader effect, if this guy sticks around, you can then start to make them warp a card every single turn, which is great. And then the last card of the Gradual Advantage turn 2 package is the Salsa. And this is really a card that you want to be seeing for turn 2 because it sort of sets up your deck. It never really sticks around for multiple turns unless you develop each of these 3 cards on turn 2 with your Awaken, which is generally what you aim to do. Then your opponent generally can kill 2 out of 3 of these cards and then has to pick one to leave you with. But this guy has the same activate main as the Supreme Kai. If you have 2 or more Dark Dragon Balls in your drop, you can play it for 1, and then you can place up to 2 Dark Dragon Balls from your deck into your drop. So these guys, along with the Mechikabura 1-drop that we saw before, they really help facilitate turn 2 Awaken, and I awakened turn 2 every single game today, I believe. Unless I went first. If I went first, then obviously I awakened turn 3, because then I can't get the leader swing to search 2 balls off. But yeah, it's super easy to awaken turn 2 nowadays, which is great for that extra pressure. And yeah, just being able to dump the balls with this guy is amazing. Again, you can't play this after you use your triple attack though. And then when it's played, your opponent chooses a card in their hand, sends it to the warp, and then draws a card. This might seem like a bit of a weird effect and a bit kind of useless, but honestly in this deck it really sets up the rest of the deck for the turn 2 and turn 3 plays, and turn 4 plays to be honest. Because the issue is a lot of decks that you might play against might not use their drop area all that much early on. They might, you know, any cards that they might combo or any 1-drops that they leave hanging around, they'll combo off and charge them in Z energy, and then just have them sat in Z energy for a later play. And so if your opponent doesn't fill up their drop area with any battle cards, you're not going to be able to warp any of their battle cards with your balls and with your Awaken skill. Which can then make the Shroom effect to get 2 battle cards in their warp, or 2 cards in their warp, quite tricky to get that extra draw, which you definitely want to be aiming for. So this effect, just to force them to warp a card from hand and draw 1, sure, it gives them a little bit of cycle, but it also gives them 1 card in warp, which is 1 closer to the Shroom. Then it means when you swing with Shroom, as long as they have a card on their board that you can warp, you then get the draw, because it checks for the 2 cards in warp after you warp their battle card. And it's the same with the Supreme Kai, the same logic applies. Obviously it gets them a card in warp unconditionally, unless they obviously have 0 cards in hand. But yeah, the Supreme Kai and the Salsa are great for setting up just the extra card or 2 that you need in warp to kind of get the rest of your effects live. And then when this card attacks, your opponent chooses 1 battle card in their drop area, sends it to the warp, and then you draw a card. So again, it's one of the 3 Gradual Advantage package. You're ideally dropping 1 copy of each of these turn 2 with your Awaken, and then they're kind of forced to leave probably at least one of those on the board going into your next turn, which is where the advantage really starts to come with this deck. And you can really start to just push to like 12, 13, 14 cards in hand, especially with your leader being a draw 2 on the front side, and then you can potentially draw 3 once per game with your triple attack. And then the other early play is the new Salsa from set 21. So this guy is a 4-drop crit 15k. If it was removed from the battle area, it would be removed from the game instead. And when it's played, your opponent warps a card from their hand and draws a card, so same auto as the old Salsa on play. But this guy is really nice because if your leader is Mechikabura and you have 2 or more energy, you can just pay 1 and play it from drop. So this guy's amazing on turn 2, especially if you're going first, because you won't be able to play the Shroom on turn 2 because your opponent needs 2 or more energy for him. So it can be really nice just to, again, set up that early card in the warp just to enable the Shroom later on and the 8 drops later on. But it can also be super nice just to get a little bit of crit pressure early as well, and it doesn't cost you a card from hand, so it's effectively like drawing a card, which is amazing. Plus the fact that it's crit potentially makes it a +2 in a way. So this kind of unsuspecting card is actually really, really nice early on if you go first. If you go second and you don't see one of these 3 cards that we just showed before, then this card can be your turn 2 play as well, just for, again, that crit pressure. There was a lot of games where I ended up siding 1 copy of this card out just because I don't feel like you need to see more than 1 copy of this in a game, and that's why we run it at such a low ratio anyways, because you only really want to play it on turn 2 or turn 3. Again, it's a 15k, Z leaders are 20k most of the time, or you're going to run into a Senzu Bean style effect. 15ks are just power creep nowadays. But yeah, this card is amazing early on, and sometimes you side it down to 1 copy if you just need more space in your deck, but 2 copies I generally find to be okay. And as well, it's a great pitch target for your Bulls, as well as the 1-drop Meki, because they both have drop effects, so you can pitch them early for the Bulls. And then going into the Toa package, I'm running 2 of the 2-drop Toa and 3 of the 3-drop. To be honest, I'm really back and forth about this package because it's great into unisons, because this deck kind of can struggle to deal with a unison, I believe, and this can just kind of punish a unison if it goes to 4 or higher markers with the 3-drop. However, it's really not great outside of that. The 2-drop Toa can be nice in terms of setting another card into their warp, which did come up once today. I did end up playing this guy just to warp a battle card off their board and swing 20k crit into them. But I don't think I played the 3-drop at all day. It's a bit kind of a weird one. Again, if you see these 2 cards on your turn 2 or turn 3 and you want to start applying pressure, then it can be a great chain to go into. But it's a bit trickier to see these cards as a pair when you run them at, like, you have to run them at such low ratios anyways, so it's a bit harder to see them as a pair. I'm not sure if I think they're still worth running, but I'm kind of back and forth on the package in general. And as well, you can tap 2 to evolve this over your 1-drop Toa, which, again, if you're against a unison reliant deck, then that can come up because you can go 2-drop, swap into 3-drop, and then pay 2 to evolve over a 1-drop into a 3-drop just to force them to warp a bunch of cards from hand. The package definitely underperformed for me today, but I think it has its matchups, it has its moments as well. And yeah, it probably will come up, so I'm not sure whether I can keep it in or cut it, to be honest. And then on to the big boys. We have 3 of the new 8-drop, 2 of the old 8-drop. This new 8-drop is crazy good, so you can pay 2 energy if you have 4 or more energy to play it, and then choose one of your opponent's battle cards, negate its skills for the game, and then gain control of it. So this is your answer to the Gogeta secret rare. It's also just your answer to the Gogeta 8-drops in general, because even if they've been played for that turn and you can't remove it from the board, you can just use this to negate its skills for the game. And then it doesn't have Aegis, and then they can't get all of their Aegis synergy effects. And then also, if that wasn't good enough, because you can take control of it if it's like not a secret rare as well. It's a deflect dual attacker, and then when it's played, if your opponent has 4 or more cards in their warp, you choose one of their battle cards, ignoring barrier, and their opponent chooses 1 card in their hand, and they both go to the warp. So this card is amazing for the deck. This is like entirely what the deck needed. The Z lead is nice, but this is really the game changer for the deck, because it's an out to cards like Gogeta SCR, Zamasu cards, anything with indestructible or that just can't be removed by skills, or if you just need to negate a guy's skills for the turn or for the game as well. But it's also barrier removal for black, and with no cost restriction attached either, so it is removing pretty much any card in the game unless it has barrier and indestructible, which obviously is not going to be something that we come across. So this card is absolutely insane for 2 energy, and the fact that you just develop a 30k dual attacker, get some hand destruction, get one of your opponent's battle cards, get some barrier, like, it's just insane. And then 2 copies of the old 8-drop. This card is still really good. It didn't come up for me at all today, unfortunately. I do think the green Gohan matchup that I lost, I could have maybe looked at going for this card on my kill turn, because I ended up going for this guy instead, but I think this could have been the play instead. But I'd already misplayed with the power burst and the support at that point, so it was a bit rough. But this guy, ideally you play him for 3 energy using the 1-drop that we discussed earlier. You can play him for 4 from your hand, but playing him for 3 is just better. He's a 1-cost 10k, which is a bit frustrating, but he is also your early pitch targets for your balls as well, because you want to get him in the drop early to then just replay off of the 1-drop later. And then when it's played, if your opponent has 4 or more cards in the warp, you choose all your opponent's battle cards and warp them, and then you can play up to 2 battle cards from your opponent's warp that cost 7 or less, with different card names and their skills negated for the game. So it's really great just to kind of for nothing almost, or for very little in hand, or no cards in hand if you play off the 1-drop, just to build 3 guys on board. And this guy is also a 30k double striker, and it also obviously clears their board, which is great. Like I say, it didn't come up for me today, unfortunately. I do really enjoy slamming this card down, and in testing it has come up a lot. Like I say, when you go hand for hand against someone in terms of combo power, and you're both there sat with nothing, you can just pay 3 to play this guy from the drop, and he just turns the tide of the game. This card is ideally the guy that you want to be dropping alongside your Z leader, because restanding a double striker with the Z leader effect is better than restanding a single striker. But most of the time you just play this card because it's just better most of the time, unfortunately. Unless they have a really wide board, in which case this guy is just a beast. So that's kind of the main threats of the deck and the main bombs, and also the mid-game of the deck. Going into the extra cards and all the defensive stuff, we have 3 copies of Darkness Judgment. This card's amazing. It's a negate for 1, which hasn't come up for me yet, but the main reason you run it is it's got an activate battle where if it's your opponent's turn, you can give one of your cards 5k for the turn, so you can bean your leader. And also if your opponent has 3 or more cards in warp, it's free to use the activate battle skill. So you just get a free bean, and in a deck where you already have a 20k Z leader, going to potentially 25k on opponent's turns is just insane right now, especially considering that it's free and then you can still hold energy open for cards like Petrification for any tool swings. So going wide against this deck just doesn't work because you have this plus Z leader, and then going tool also doesn't really work because you have Petrification, which is just an insane card at the moment anyways. And then this deck can go both wide and tool at the same time with the 8-drops and the little guys that give you advantage. Another card that I love in this deck, and another reason to play the deck alongside Darkness Judgment, because I really do think this is the reason to play the deck. Just a black deck that has a bean for free is Snap. And then the deck also has barrier removal inbuilt and Goji to SCR answer inbuilt. Which are, I think, the main reasons why I was drawn to the deck, just to give it a try in this current format. But Power Burst is amazing in this deck. I love this card. This is probably one of my favorite negates at the moment, other than maybe Petrification. Being able to get Sparking 5 super early on, because you're obviously digging out your balls every turn and then discarding them plus a card to draw 2. Amazing. There were often times on turn, if I'd gone second, I would use a bunch of my balls to get to 4 or 5 in drop, and then if I was facing down a green Gohan, I would just be sparking power bursting any of their crit swings, taking the life to my hand, taking the 1-drop back to my hand for next turn, and then just cantripping away again. Super amazing card in this deck, and it's the reason why you want to also be packing so many 1-drops as well. 2 token negates. The card is good in this deck, and it's good this format again. The only thing to watch out for is against green, and just generally, but also mainly against green Gohan and Gobros. Koitsukai is definitely a card that they'll be running. But also against yellow if they have like the yellow Sin against you, the Sin promo. this card is a bit useless. But it's really nice. It's especially nice in this deck just to help you get from like 5 life down to your Z Awaken range, because this deck doesn't take life. Even when you awaken, you can just stay at 8 life, which is again where Power Burst is so strong, because you also sometimes just want to negate early that's live, rather than having to take a crit swing. So that's where the power of Power Burst comes from. And then support is just nice, and it's especially nice to have the flexibility with both these cards in your hand. But it's still a good card. And then the other negates we run, 2 Petrification. This is like one of the cards that carries black at the moment. You need to be playing a black deck that can facilitate consistent Petrification use, and that's a big reason why I wanted to pick this deck as well, because early on you can thin your deck massively with the bulls and with the leader searching the bulls as well. So you can really just find Petrification early on super consistently in the matchups where you need it. And as well, this deck has a myriad of drop area effects, so it has quite a few good discard targets, as well as once you use the triple attack, you can discard cards like the Salsa that you wouldn't be playing anyways. And then the last extra card is 2 Super Kamehameha. I sided this out almost every game. The only game I kept it in was against Spirit Bomb, because it's just a nice card into yellow. I might have kept it in into Gogeta actually. I'm not entirely sure, but I definitely didn't use it against Gogeta if I did keep it in. This is mainly a card that you use against yellow nowadays. Like, there's not much to hit with it. And the way that I did end up using it was to counterplay a 1-drop Roshi, because I didn't want him drawing 2. And then I used Koitsukai in the end to deal with the floodgates anyways. And then last sort of standard black stuff, we run 4 of the Vegeta super combo. Right now I definitely prefer this one to like a Sparking super combo or anything like that. Just because it helps you thin more. There's a lot of clunky cards in the deck. We run a lot of random extra cards. And so it's nice to be able to cycle them back in on kill turns. And it's also nice to be able to cycle to your threats as well. Yeah, I love this super combo. And then the Black Spice, we run 1 Goku, 1 Vegeta, and Evil Saiyan SCR. These are the cards you look for to kill. I didn't end up playing Vegeta all day. I don't even think I played... No, I played Beyond All Limits once, actually. These cards really didn't come up, but that's because I ended up siding out Vegeta a couple of times just for Bardock Overrealms, because I understood that I needed to be more defensive in the matchups anyways. But maybe... I do think you still run the package. It's still a broken package. Running through the Z deck, we have 1 Z leader, so you can Z Awaken at 3 or less life for 2 Z energy and 1 energy. When you swing, you can discard a card to draw 2, and it's got a new activate main where you can bottom deck a card from your hand, choose one of your Mechikabura 8 drops with 30k power and switch it to active mode, and then play a 5 cost or less from your opponent's warp with skills negated from the game. So again, for free, you're generating 2 extra swings, one of which can potentially be double strike if you have the double strike 8 drop down. So if you can get your Z Awaken down early enough, kill turns on this deck can be really disgusting. Generally, you're looking to kill around turn 4 or turn 5, once you get the 8 drops live, and you can start using this guy's effect just to generate you a massive board for free. And the main thing that really stops this deck is like floodgates like Dormant or Flying Nimbus. That's really what can be a struggle for this deck to get through, in my eyes. But that's where, especially against Nimbus, that's where the triple attack on the leader can really shine. And then going into the rest of the Z deck, we're running 1 of the new Z extra cards. I love these Z extra cards. It just means that if you are bricking, if you don't find a good play on turn 2 or turn 3, you can just use one of your random Z energy you've got floating from a cantrip earlier, play this guy out and have it sit there as a 10k potential buff for the rest of the game. And then once you build the Z energy, you can also threaten to remove their cards, which is amazing. And that goes for any of the Z extra cards in any of the colors. It's definitely worth running, especially because it just kind of neutralizes the effects of Vegeta and Riposte Floodgates. I was running 2 Majin Buu. I don't think the second one ever came up today. This deck really doesn't use its Z deck very often, but it's just nice to have. 1 Goku. This card definitely came up a lot today. Super strong, just being able to have access to a double strike, because the deck doesn't have any cheap double strikes inbuilt inherently. So just being able to have access to that from the Z deck to force them to use a token negate or something when they're on 2 life, and then force them to 1 and try and kill through that is very powerful. And then the one Toa to go along with the Toa package, didn't use this at all today. The only time I played the Toa, I just hardcasted it for 2 because I had no real plays in hand at the time. And the one surmounting, which again I didn't use at all today. I think it could have come up against the Gohan matchup that I lost. If I'd played correctly, then I could have just at least used this guy to get an extra card in my hand to maybe try and push through a bit harder. But again, the misplay that I mentioned before really cost me that game already. So yeah, that's the Z deck. And then going into the side deck, this was very last minute. I literally built this side deck the night before the regionals, so it's definitely not solid. There's cards in there that I will for sure be keeping in, but there's also cards I'll be changing. So the first card is Tushin. I kind of want to move this to mainboard over the Toa cantrip. I may need to test that. The issue is the Toa cantrip is obviously a Demon Realm race and also fixes your hands when you brick, which is very possible. This build is currently 56 cards. Like I said, I didn't have time to really build my own version of the deck. I just took Mikey's list that he so kindly gave me and ran with it and made a couple of changes here and there. I do think this deck can function as a 50 card deck, but the logic behind 56 is that you get your balls in life much less often, which I think is sound logic and also makes me want to try a 60 card version. But then issues with consistency in terms of seeing cards like super combos show up. So it's a bit of a hard one to balance. I need to figure it out more and do a bit more testing. I figured going in with 50 cards was fine, 56 cards was fine because I expected to see the odd cooler mill here and there. So it wasn't too bad there. And because it's the list that I'd been testing, I didn't have time to really look into just trying a whole new version of the deck. But I could see myself mainboarding Shin. And maybe cutting down on the Toas, I'm not really sure yet. Whenever I sided this in, I did end up siding out 2 of the Toas as well. But the Toa is really nice just for the consistency to find your turn 2 pieces or turn 3 pieces. But it's also a nice pitch target for your balls early on if your hand is a bit kind of clunky. 2 Bardock Overwhelm. This is just the best card in black, other than maybe Petrification. These 2 cards just carry the color at the moment. It's a bit unfortunate that the rest of the color isn't, you know, living up to these 2 cards, but yeah, these 2 cards are just amazing. I'm at least happy to see black doing well. This card I sided in any game where I thought I would need a Floodgate, so I don't think I sided it in against Go Bros. I sided it in against Green Gohan. I didn't side it in against Gogeta, and I think I sided it versus Spirit Bomb just as kind of an insurance to get one more turn when they might get closer to the 7 cards under their field. But yeah, super, super broken card. Any deck that doesn't rely on a Unison to push through, or leader, and is trying to play aggressively, like isn't really a control value deck, then this card is just going to carry you. It is really insane. And then we're also siding 2 more copies of Petrification. Speaking of the best cards in black, in my eyes, you need to run black decks right now that can facilitate 4 copies of this card. And that's a big reason why I ended up going with Mechikabura, because it just facilitates it really well. Its plays are all cheap. It has good discard targets, and it can deck thin super early with the balls to try and find these copies early on as well. These were the 6 cards I sided in against every Gohan deck, and then I would side out, you know, the 2 Toas for the 2 Shins. I believe I sided out a 3-drop Toa and a 4-drop Salster, and then 2 Super Kamehameha because that card does nothing in the matchup. Going into the rest of the sideboard, I sided 2 Gohans. This was just for if I played against any Soul Striker-esque decks. I did end up siding it into the Gogeta matchup, but it did basically nothing because he obviously just removes it when he uses a Union Fusion skill. 3 Koitsukai. This card's just insane. You definitely need this card in like every black deck for sure, and probably just every deck nowadays. This card I was siding it in I believe all my matchups that weren't green. So I didn't side it in against Go Bros, didn't side it in against Green Gohan, and then I sided it versus Spirit Bomb and Gogeta. It didn't come up for me at all versus Gogeta, but against Spirit Bomb it was absolutely clutch just to push through a turn where they drop Vegito on me, and also rip apart their hand at the same time. This card is insane, and we're kind of seeing that with how many Green Gohan decks are just main decking 4 copies and using it to push through with the 8-drop every turn now. And then the last 2 cards in the sideboard are maybe a little bit troll. So I was also siding 2 Haru Haru and 2 Ultimate Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet. The Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet is good in theory. I just didn't play against any Golden Frieza. I was considering siding it against Gobros for the Golden Frieza Unison, but I didn't end up opting to, just because I figured token negates will probably do the same amount against a Golden Frieza Unison than this card would, because it's only dual attack rather than triple attack. And yeah, because I have, you know, 2 token negates plus the 3 power bursts in case they can deal with the token, I figured I was okay not to side this. But yeah, this card is nice against Golden Frieza. I'm not sure how I feel about it for this deck in particular, because you can go to 25k base once you're Z awakened anyways, so the triple attacking Gohan combo doesn't do a whole lot against you anyways. But that's something I'd need to test. I've not played this deck against Golden Frieza at all. And I was side decking 2 Haru Haru. I tried to find space to side this in against Green Gohans, because I figured I don't see a lot of builds running cards like Focus Breakthrough, and if I can get them to tap out, I don't need to worry about Focus Breakthrough anyways. And it's just quite nice to get some pressure going, because this deck has a lot of 1 and 2 energy plays, so this will generate a lot of value there. And it's also a Demon Realm race, so it's searchable and it's a target for your balls and everything. I just didn't have the space to side them in, to be honest. It never really came up for me that I could take out enough cards to put these in, because I was already siding 6 cards into the Gohan matchup anyways. Maybe if I were to up the main deck to 60 cards and try out a 60 card build, this card can be facilitated a bit more. I don't think I'd side this as much against yellow because they have T-Blow. But maybe if you can force them to tap out, it's not bad. But yeah, Haru Haru was a bit troll. I didn't use it at all. I didn't side it in at all, I don't think, either. But it was a funny one. And the deck ended up performing well regardless, luckily. But yeah, that is the deck profile. Apologies if it's a bit long. Obviously, I wanted to explain through a lot of the cards because they're either very old or very new. I think this deck is a really strong contender going into the next format. It's one of the best black decks, along with maybe SS4 Bardock, and we'll kind of see how the format develops with this new anniversary box. I'm very excited. Thank you guys for watching the video. Hope you all enjoyed the deck profile, and I will catch you guys in the next one.